had to be either personal or impersonal. And there are at least two good reasons to think that this cause is personal. First, the personhood of the cause of the universe is implied by its timelessness and immateriality, since the only things we know of that can possess these attributes are either minds or abstract objects, like numbers. But abstract objects don't stand in causal relations. Therefore, the transcendent cause of the origin of the universe must be of the order of mind. The cause of the origin of the universe is an uncreated, unembodied mind. Second, only a personal cause can explain the origin of a temporal effect from a timeless cause. If the cause of the origin of the universe were an impersonal set of necessary and sufficient conditions, it would be impossible for the cause to exist without its effect. For if the sufficient conditions for the cause, or rather if the sufficient conditions for the effect were given, then the effect must be given as well. For example, the cause of water's freezing is the temperature being below 0 degrees centigrade. If the temperature were eternally below 0 degrees, then any water that was around would be frozen from eternity. It would be impossible for the water to just begin to freeze a finite time ago. So if the cause is timelessly present, the effect should be timelessly present as well. The only way for the cause to be timeless and for the effect to begin in time is for the cause to be a personal agent who freely chooses to create an effect in time without any prior determining conditions. And thus the cause of the universe must be a free personal agent. So, in conclusion then, we are brought, I believe, not merely to a transcendent cause of the universe, but to its personal creator. And this is what everybody means by God.
This is what everyone means by God, and I'm going to start by disputing that. First of all, I'm reluctant to take part in a debate on an immensely serious subject. Debates are fine for funny topics, when you can do a muck and jet, punch versus Judy act, and take cheap points of each other and go for laughs. This is a topic that has been dividing people for millennia. It's probably the most important subject there is, and I would much prefer to have a lengthy and amiable discussion. But so be it. I was warned about Bill's arguments because someone sent me a videotape of a very similar discussion which Bill starred. So I'm familiar with his line of argument. Although much of it I think is more appropriate for the next debate, which I understand will be between us, Bill, where we'll be discussing whether or not a 21st century scientist can be a Christian. The thing that has to be said about Bill is that he too is an atheist. I wonder if he's aware of the extent of his own atheism, because there's many a God he doesn't believe in. Ra, Osiris, Jupiter, Jove, Zeus, Apollo, Mars, Mercury, Neptune, Vulcan, Bacchus, Mammon, Pan and Pluto come to mind. Nor does he worship Thor or Odin. The gods of the Aztecs, the Incas, the Mayans and the Toltecs are not in his theology. And you can bet he's an atheist when it comes to goddesses like Diana, Minerva, Athena, Venus and Aphrodite. Does he believe in the God that guides the activities of Bin Laden, who in turn believes that God guided the Boeings to the World Trade Center? Is he enthusiastic about the God that endorses George Bush's plans of massive retaliation? Does he advocate a white God, a male God? Or does he admit to the possibility that God might be black or female? Or is God odorless or sexless? I'll presume that... so anyway, it's a simple fact that as far as 99.9% of deities are concerned, Bill and I share a common ground. We don't believe in them. Now, I presume he'll argue, in fact he has, that the God he believes in is fundamentally the Christian God, the God is love God, the God who makes up the third of the Holy Trinity. And but that God, I'm sad to say, like Christianity itself, has as many forms and faces and identities as any of the pantheons of past and present. In the next discussion, I'll be trying to make the point that there are almost as many Christianities as there are Christians, which is one of the greatest enemy of Christianity is not the odd atheist passing through, but Christians themselves who fight and hack at each other and have for centuries. But equally true that the God Christians postulate has many faces. Now, as a believer in a God as love God, he must feel uneasy about the Old Testament Jehovah, who destroyed the entire population of this planet, saving Noah, his family and a boatload of animals when he was miffed by human misbehaviour, or by the God that nuked Sodom and Gomorrah when the citizens were behaving like the denizens of Oxford Street and King's Cross, by the brutal sourpuss who created eternal damnation for people to suffer it. Then this God clearly differs from the God of love, who sent his only begotten Son from heaven to save us from death, the death that he cursed us with, along with original sin, just a few begats earlier. Jesus said that his Father's house has many mansions, and the landlord, God, is many gods, and you can't believe in all of them. You have to choose one and say, this is the God I believe in. Now, Bill will argue, has argued, that the principal reason for believing in God is, yes, that you need a God for creation. Although I have to warn you, Bill, your current hypotheses about scientific views are somewhat out of date, but we'll tackle that in our next. I've done 12 television programs and 2 books with Paul Davies. Paul Davies believes in God. He's one of the very few prominent scientists who does. But Paul's God is by no means Bill's God. But because Bill is not a Christian fundamentalist, he hasn't argued for a 6-day creation and a 7th-day rest. He's conceded the likelihood of the Big Bang, although the jury is out and there are other now contesting theories. But picking up that argument, that you can't get something out of nothing, Bill insists that God was the something that gave birth to time and space and matter and energy, to all the wonders that now surround us. In effect, the Big Bang is a great orgasm. And that reminds me, in fact, of the great Egyptian mythology surrounding Ra and that creation of the universe. Just it may amuse or interest you that Ra stands on a little mountain called the Benben, a little formalised mountain above the primordial waters, and masturbates, and from his semen creates everything. It's funny, isn't it, how many of the creation myths eliminate women. But in essence, Bill argues that there has to be a beginning and God provided. Now this brings us to atheism. Theologians and priests and congregations war about God's nature. We atheists are an agreeable people. We agree on one thing, just one. We agree that we don't believe in God, in any God. It's as simple as not believing in Father Christmas, or the Tooth Fairy, or others of our ilk, humanists, communists, rationalists, skeptics, etc., may mount all sorts of arguments and take ideological positions. But the atheist simply says, I don't believe. Thus atheism isn't a philosophy, isn't a morality, isn't an elaborate set of beliefs. It's simply a disbelief. Thanks, but no thanks. If I tell you that I don't believe in Father Christmas, I don't think you expect me to mount a huge philosophical argument around it. You'd probably think, well, that's fair and reasonable. I've never believed in God, but God knows I tried to. I gave up on God when I was 5. Everyone around me believed or seemed to believe in God, like my dad, who was a congregational minister. And I prayed for belief, but my prayers weren't answered. I left messages on God's answering machine. He never returned my calls. And whilst waiting, I suddenly discovered that believing in God was unnecessary, surplus to intellectual requirements. God was redundant. And he's right, I came to it through a contemplation, a terrified contemplation of eternity. I'd lie in my little bed at night, my grandparents rejected